루페르트 교수님에 대해서 제가 이제 그 소개를 드리면, 지금 우타 루페르트 교수님은 현재 독일 프랑크푸르트 대학교 정치학과에서 지금 가르치고 계시고요. 그 다음에 이제 동대학교에 여성학 젠더학 센터인 코르넬리아 괴테 센터가 있는데, 이 코르넬리아 괴테 센터의 운영위원을 맡고 계십니다. 그리고 노모스 출판사가 이제 발간하는 국제 단행본 시리즈가 그 페미니스트적 비판적 정치경제학이라는 그 시리즈가 있는데, 이 시리즈의 공동 발행인이시기도 합니다. 더불어서 루페르트 교수님은 그 독일 연방교육부의 합동 프로젝트인 아프리카의 아시아적 선택이라는 커다란 그 프로젝트가 있는데, 이 프로젝트의 틀 내에서 초국적 젠더 정치에 대한 새로운 접근, 중국과 아프리카의 협력, 이 프로젝트의 연구 책임자로 활동하고 계십니다. 그래서 지금 중국과 아프리카를 잇는 그 프로젝트를 계속 해오셨기 때문에, 특히 이번에 이제 그 중국에서 이제 그 패킹 대학교에 그 선생님들이 오시고 또 한다고 해서 꼭 한번 여기 오셔서 만나 뵙고 싶어 하셨었습니다. 그래서 이제 루페르트 교수님이 이제 관심을 갖고 계시는 분야는 이제 젠더 개발, 그 다음에 이제 지구와 젠더, 그 다음에 지구와 여성운동 쪽에 주로 이제 맞춰서 그 연구를 하고 계시고요. 그 대표적인 이제 그 저서를 보면 부키나파소의 개발 과정에서의 여성노동과 여성정책이라는 그 저서가 있고, 그 다음에 지역적으로 움직이고 지구적으로 행동해라라는 그런 그 저서, 그 다음에 동유럽에서의 여성운동과 여성정책, 그리고 글로벌 정치의 여성정책적 기회, 국제적 맥락의 협상 경험들과 같은 그 작업들을 통해서 지구화에 대한 그 페미니즘적 분석의 지평을 확장하는 한편으로 또 초국적 페미니즘의 가능성을 탐색하고 계십니다. 네, 그러면 루페르트 교수님이 보내주신 그 원고를 전미향 교수님께서 대독해 주시겠습니다. 부탁드리겠습니다.
I read his keynote speech. Today, more than 20 years after the peak of transnational women's movements worldwide prominence at the Beijing Women's Conference, it seems like transnational feminism has lost its momentum. Is transnational feminism today able to stand up to serious threats against it? Not only to the gains made in women's rights and gender equality, but also to practices of transnational feminist solidarity? What currently characterizes transnational feminism in a period in which capitalism drives neoliberal governance and the latter manages the global market economy? In a period in which militarism and religious fundamentalisms are on the increase, the more after the US election, what does transnational feminism have to offer to contemporary struggles for social change, to the transformation of global hegemonies, to the building of ideas and knowledge on justice and sustainable lives or livelihoods? In order to outline some of the possible answers to these questions, my main suggestion is to undertake a shift in focus and concentrate on the spatial dimensions of transnational feminism and transformative potential that lies therein. This perspective shall allow me to unfold the two main assumptions that constitute the basic frame of my paper. Transnational feminism dedicates growing attention to the deconstruction of dichotomous ideas about the interconnections between the local and the global. Against the binary thinking of the local as the empirical evidence base for the global, which appears the true conceptual level for theories and power politics, transnational feminism accentuates the realness of relational processes. It not only functions across frontiers, but also across the conventionally static notions of local, national, and international. Although the significance of an epistemic privilege is contested, it is widely recognized that transnational feminism is, in theory and practice, shaped and instructed through analysis, strategies, and experiences from the global south. This may explain why the current wave of South-South solidarity politics that informs governmental processes of trans-regionalization only plays a minor role in transnational feminism. My reflections in this part will build on the empirical findings of a research project on civil society cooperation, especially with regard to gender politics between China and South Africa in comparison to China and Ethiopia, that my collaborator Dr. Rwando Mageza Bathel and I have conducted together for the last 3 years. Since the Beijing World Women's Conference in 1995, ideas about what we would call today transnational feminist politics have changed substantially. Whilst the Beijing Forum gave above all evidence to the strength, the prevalence, the plurality and the capacities of the world's women's movements to negotiate, coordinate, and reconcile, in the meantime, not only the context of women's movements politics have changed dramatically. The movements themselves have transformed from what we might have called global feminist networks into a broad range of transnational movements. This shift in terminology indicates a double move. On the one hand, it takes into account the academic appeals from Black feminist and post-colonial studies to deconstruct the notion of the global and to introduce a deeper understanding of intersectionality into international feminist discourses. On the other hand, it reflects the diversity of processes of decentering and re-localizing women's movement politics worldwide. Regarding the global transnational distinction, usually the term global is employed either as a substitute for international in the conventional sense of interstate relations, or in an even more universalistic meaning of worldwide and overall. To my understanding, which is informed by feminist international relations in political science, the global has to be understood as an outcome of the interplay between the different levels of the local, the national, and the regional, and the international. As a working definition, I therefore suggest that if in fact 3 of these existing levels of actions are, with regard to a specific issue, simultaneously involved and currently engage several world regions, amongst them parts of the so-called southern world, this may result into something global. Any less careful use of the term global inevitably leads to the rightly contested hierarchical idea of the global as the space of real importance. The global then appears as that space that incorporates power, capital, and transformative capacities and carries as its opposite the sense of the local as associated with a place instead of space, labor instead of capital, tradition instead of political capacities, etc. In contrast to the global, the notion of transnational is less ambitious, therefore less conflicting, and certainly more open and fluid. With regard to feminist networks, Valentin Mogadam has recently defined transnational as simply as comprising groups or individuals from 3 or more countries. Ideas of the transnational that are closer to the conventional international relations understanding would add to that a reference to the international sphere, either in the sense that transnational activities aim to impact on international politics, or that they engage international institutions or norms or standards. More area studies-oriented contributions would emphasize the local-global connection and claim that the transnational does not necessarily need to transcend national borders, but could also evolve from and within the only one country, as the whole discussion on domesticating international norms has shown, for example. In any case, compared to the global, the transnational is less ambivalent in terms of representation and less problematic in terms of binary thinking. Changing binary thinking is in turn a central concern of transnational feminisms. Place in the sense of localized and situated experiences and the engagement with particular locations have always been important to transnational feminism. Simultaneously, the deconstruction of place as a traditionally given thing or concept and its reassessment as non-static and relational certainly represents one of the most important transformative aspects to current conceptions of transnational feminism. My characterization of transnational feminism corresponds on one hand with the classification that Ravida Bakshi and Wendy Harcourt unfold as guideline to their comprehensive Oxford Handbook of Transnational Feminist Movements, which appeared last year. Alongside, I borrow from the work of Manisha Desai, who was one of the social scientists who put forward already many years ago the dictum that transnational feminisms would have to overcome all kinds of center-periphery dichotomies in political practice and in academic theory. It was inter alia the rereading of her work which pushed me to reflect on the interconnected spatial dimensions of transnational feminism. Together with Bakshi and Harcourt, I understand transnational feminism in a rather pragmatic way as a set of political strategies, social practices, and analytical approaches. It ranges from transnational feminist movement politics to the more institutionalized United Nations, or, in a wider sense, global governance centered inter- and transnational feminist politics of transnational non-governmental and para-governmental organizations to academic feminism and feminist theory building outside academia. Thus, I not go into the debate whether femocrats should be taken as true feminists or not, but include them as explicitly as professionalized women's organizations into my characterizations. Central to my understanding of transnational feminism is the whole multiplicity of levels and spaces of action and a wide range of analytical perspectives on these issues. Furthermore, together with Desai and prior to her work, especially with the key contributions to transnational feminism from Indopal Grover and Karen Kaplan that appeared as early as 1994, and from Jackie Alexander and Chandra Mohanty in 1997. I want to stress the decentering impact and intention of transnational feminism, whereby I grasp decentering in a sense which supports both the concerns of the trans aspect of transnational feminism, the spatial components of transnational, as well as the gender components of feminism. The West and the rest, space and place, respectively, local and global dichotomies are in this perspective as much contested as homogenized gender conceptions. In the word of Marsha Desai, transitional is used to problematize locational politics of local, global, and center-periphery in favor of lines that cut across them. And as she goes on, both canonical texts of transnational feminisms sought to highlight the intersectional nature of gender. Both involved critiquing a homogenized conception of gender in feminist theory. This twofold idea of decentering is it that mostly drives my current interest in transnational feminism. Achievements and failures of transnational women's movements in world politics, which have concerned me for many years, appear in this regard more as background providers than as the focus of my thinking. This, the more than today, 21 years after the peak of transnational women's movements' worldwide visibility at the Beijing Women's Conference, this kind of transnational feminist action seems to have definitely lost its momentum. Forum meetings to world conferences and all the connected mass protests, campaigns, and lobbying processes could, of course, not hinder the rise of neoliberalism in world economy and global governance, the latter managing the global markets. Nor could they stop or at least slow down the worldwide increases in militarism and religious fundamentalisms. Perhaps it is inter alia because I'm personally tired of the frustrating findings of feminist political economy and the frustrating search for changes in global capitalism, in world economy, or in the international division of labor. Why I find Desai's notion of transnational feminism as a cartography, theory, and practice so inspiring. In contrast to frustration about missing social changes, missing leftist political allies, and other comparable missings, the notion of cartography allows me to value the new spaces for reflection and resistance that have been opened, the new perspectives in critique that have been developed, and the ideas as well as the realness of transversal praxis as both means to and goal of gender justice. Even though, as Desai puts it in the introduction to her 2015 paper, these contributions have not translated easily into feminist goals. The flexibility that is central to transnational feminism in theory and praxis indicates possibilities, even if it has not lived up to its promises. 2 points to illustrate this abstract notion of transnational feminist reflexivity I want to introduce. The first is again the growing attention to the deconstruction of dichotomous ideas about the interconnections between the local and the global. Against the binary thinking of the local as the empirical evidence base for the global, which appears in contrast as the true conceptual level for theories and power politics, transnational feminism accentuates the realness of all kinds of relational processes. It not only functions across frontiers, but also across the conventionally static notions of local, national, and international. The whole variety of more recent empirically grounded studies that try to understand local and national gender politics in this light and investigate the ways in which gender politics are informed through transnational conditions and simultaneously inform the transnational, give proof to this argument. As diverse as they may be in terms of subject and issues, they in common conceptualize the nation-state within the historical legacy and the current world economic system. Reverend Mageza's investigation on gender politics in post-genocide Rwanda, which carries the punning title Mobilizing Transnational Gender Politics in Post-Genocide Rwanda, represents an excellent example for this perspective on and between the national and the transnational. My second point of illustration is that, at least in the European context, widespread recognition that transnational feminism is, in theory and practice, shaped and instructed through analysis, strategies, and experiences from the global south. Although the significance of an epistemic privilege is contested, I argue that, again, at least in the European context, there is no doubt about the comprehensive expertise from the global south to transnational feminism that goes along with the recognition of the structural asymmetries and historical specificities that are constitutive for the border crossings that perform the transnational. Compared to Western-centric knowledge production, in other fields of feminist studies, and in the light of the whole discussion on the coloniality of knowledge, transnational feminism discerns and differs here substantially. All this should have made clear that, to my understanding, the most significant strength of transnational feminism lies in developing discursive power and influence, a tendency that holds true for political strategies and policy making on all levels of political action, as well as for patterns of organizing and international exchange. Even if this discursive strength carries on its flip side a certain weakness vis-à-vis the diverse issues of material inequality and distribution, transnational feminism contributes in this discursive sense a lot to the challenging of all kinds of global hegemonies. This strength of transnational feminism may also explain why the current wave of South-South solidarity politics that informs governmental processes of transregionalization only plays a minor role in transnational feminism. Within the international system, the ongoing revival of the politics of South-South solidarity has become a decisive factor in the increasingly important processes of transregionalization. During these processes, be it the probably most prominent, the BRICS process, or in my empirical case, the more recently emerging relations between African and Asian countries, predominant patterns of North-South divides are called into question. But despite the whole variety of current and historical examples of feminist South-South cooperation, feminist praxis and experiences of transnational women's movements with global development do not play any crucial role in these processes of transregionalization. Even if South-South solidarity at a first glance seems to be more congruent with feminist concerns and movement practices, since it lends weight to values as equality and reciprocity and political practices of dialogue and partnership, it is not surprising that feminist politics remain of little consequence in this field. States in the Global South may have engaged liberation movements and civil society support at a certain point in history. States that involve and provide support to feminist movements, to their politics and policies in a medium-term perspective, barely might be found. Overall, gender issues in the distinct Sino-African constellations we have researched remain marginal. Although individual women are involved, for example, in government delegations, they are not considered as representing gender interests in a broader sense. In the South Africans' case, most of the women who participate in government delegations are either business women who seek to take economic advantage from the evolving relations, or they belong to the ANC machinery and share the governmental interest in this form of South-South cooperation. Hence, more surprising than the feminist gap in the Sino-African governmental relations that we investigate is the absence of feminist approaches to transregionalization from below. Although we could, of course, trace some approaches in women's politics, these approaches have barely nothing in common with transnational feminist politics as described above. Women groups that prove interest in Sino-South African relations, to stay within the context of this case, do not pursue any broader political aim, but rather seek short-term improvements in terms of economic opportunities. Interestingly, the majority of South African women's organizations, and specifically those that have been involved in transnational feminism, abstain cooperation and even interaction with all Chinese Women's Federation. Others even counter the Chinese South African solidarity frame and openly oppose the new economic partnership concept, especially within the context of BRICS from below. Asked for the reasons why they abstain, our South African interview partners would not openly argue against the Chinese approaches to women and gender politics, or refer to the restrictions civil society organizations have to face in China. None of our interviewees raised the question why we expected them to be interested in collaboration. Rather, they asked us why we from Europe were interested in this issue, and then indicated that relations to partners from other parts of the Global South might be of greater importance to them. Even if we are still far away from being done with the interpretation of all our data, one could conclude that in our case, the corner points of transnational feminism that I have to try to sketch above seems to be as much a given as South-South cooperation and South-South solidarity. Self-reliant, experienced, transnationally oriented feminist organizations in South Africa do not see any need to assist in current governmental myth-building on South-South solidarity. Their practice in Southern solidarity may be characterized as much self-evident as self-confident. To conclude, all tendencies together, the deconstructive effort, the discursive strength, the intersectional prudence, and the recognition of epistemic differences provide a platform for what Goethe calls the possibilities for reflexive, transversal solidarities. Whilst they are still hard to build and demand more only permanent critical reflection, feminist dialogues and solidarities beyond the global local, academic activist and North-South divides have a lot to offer to concepts and politics of gender justice and transformation. Thank you.